When you're negotiating and you're trying to figure a deal out, that's very admirable to want things to be favorable for both sides, especially because this is a seller financing option, $120,000 per year that's paid to the seller over time. That's seller financing. So you owe them money for the business and you pay them over time. That means that you do want them to think things are fair, because if they're not, then they could bring a lawsuit against you, or they can make your life miserable. They could badmouth you, and you want to have goodwill. And if you don't have goodwill, then you shouldn't do the deal. That'd be a horrible, horrible idea. And I think that you shouldn't worry too much about being fair for everybody, because they're going to watch out for their best interest. They've already given you that. And you need to watch out for your best interest. If you just think about how old they are, so they're in their 70s, they don't want to run a business anymore. They probably want to enjoy life. If they've been doing a good job, then they don't even need the money. It's ironic that when the person that has the business and is selling it is the one that already has the money, because they've been running a successful business. And the one buying the business typically doesn't have any money. So it's opposite of what you would think in a transaction. The seller has the money, the buyer doesn't have the money. So the seller has the money and they have the business. The buyer normally has the time. Seller's older, they want to get out of the business, they want to enjoy the money they've made, or they're exhausted by it. But whatever reason, they're in this situation where they don't need the business anymore and they don't even need the money. The buyer doesn't have either. So what do you do there? That's why seller financing works out well, because the seller doesn't need the money, so they can get the value of the business paid out over time. Now, there's a huge risk for the seller when they finance. What if the buyer does a horrible job and destroys the company, which can happen pretty easily? Very, very easy to do. So then that money that they were going to get, the 120 grand a year, is gone. Well, we're not worried about that if we're the buyer. We're worried about, is it actually going to produce cash under me? When I take those sellers out of the business, when I take the current owners out of the business, will it die for that reason? So they both have risks of the business dying and the level of effort. Now, most businesses are not really worth anything, because they really require a lot of work to happen. I don't know what kind of business it is, but if an owner is involved, or an operator, if you're the operator, you got to hire yourself, and you have to decide if it's going to make money. It's really, really hard to just let a business run itself if it doesn't have $1 million of profit or more. So anyone that doesn't make $1 million of profit, which is pretty much everybody, then you're running the business, or you're very involved, or at least involved enough where you can't just turn all your cell phone devices off and go away for a week. That would be a disaster. So we get a response here about this. This guy's asking about what he should know. So this is a common strategy to buy a business. I've seen this plenty of times, and I know it doesn't feel like it, but it's honestly, this is a small deal as it's less than $1 million. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if it's less than $1 million, it's definitely a small deal. Get all of your figures in place before you start hiring professionals like lawyers. Yeah, don't just go hire lawyers. That's a horrible idea. Do your best to prove that this is a good deal as hard as you can before you pay any lawyers. Tell them the lawyers are going to tell you the same thing that you should have figured out for free. The same thing is true for bank valuations. A bank, this isn't the case here, but if you needed to get financing from a bank, they're going to want a business valuation, and that's going to cost maybe $5,000. It's going to cost some money to do that. You don't want them to do a valuation and them tell you, hey, this business isn't worth enough for us to loan you the money. That would be stupid. So when I had to get bank financing for the first business I purchased, and I did all my own calculations, and the seller initially wanted 1.3 million for the business. So I said, well, I have no idea if that's a good number. So I requested all these documents, and I did analysis, and it turned out that the business wasn't worth anywhere near that. It was worth 800,000 or 850 is what I came up with. And I told him that. I was very straight. I said, your business is worth 850 grand. I cannot pay you 1.3. I can't pay you more than 850. And so the seller didn't like that, but it turned out that I was the only one that had an offer. So I became the buyer. And then fast forward, if you think it took about 2 months to close the deal, the bank did want a business valuation, which I didn't pay for one earlier. And so when they did that evaluation, guess what they came up with? It was like 845 grand. It was very close to my numbers. And that's just because I understood the industry I was in and what the cash flow was. And the bank did the exact same thing. So there's that piece of it. Also, another tip: if you're hiring lawyers and accountants to give you the advice on the business sale, then that's a business expense and not a personal one to the business that you're buying. Okay, yeah, whatever. That's not a big deal. Who cares about that? Yeah. So you make sure your expenses go through the business. So that was the top advice given. Honestly, there's not enough information here to tell if this is a good idea. Not at all.